This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad and live today. It's very interesting to learn the last words that a person says before they die. For many times, these words or phrases are really a self-description of who that person is and what was important to him or her in the life that was lived. For example, our nation's second president, John Adams, is quoted as saying on his deathbed, "Oh yes, it is the glorious 4th of July. It is a great day. It is a good day. God bless it. God bless you all." Adams then lapsed into unconsciousness, awoke moments later and mumbled, "Thomas Jefferson still survives." Then he died. Little did Adams know that Jefferson had passed away hours earlier. Adams was certainly a guy who was always concerned for the welfare of our country. Or how about circus entrepreneur P.T. Barnum? Before he died, he asked the final question, "How are the receipts today at Madison Square Garden?" Barnum certainly was a guy who was always focused on his business. And who could forget comedian Bob Hope? His final words came after his wife asked him where he wanted to be buried. He replied, "Surprise me." Mr. Hope was certainly a guy who was always looking for a laugh. Three different gentlemen with three different gifts and talents whose passion for their gifts and talents was evident even up to the point of leaving this earth. Which makes me realize that Jesus wasn't that much different from all of us. Let's take a look at Jesus' last words as he prepared to ascend to heaven after his resurrection. This collection of words is widely known in Christian circles as the Great Commission, and it is found at the end of the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus' last interaction with his followers before he leaves them, it's not just a monologue to remind the disciples of who he is and what he's all about. It's not just a checklist of advice of things to follow or things to accomplish. It is a commissioning, an authorization, an appointment, a command to send the disciples out into the world to continue the work that Jesus first began. Jesus will no longer be around to lead the way. The disciples will no longer be following him step by step. These dudes are now on their own. It'll be up to them to ensure that this movement of compassion and love continues to ebb and flow, seeping into the cracks of society and transforming hearts one person at a time. Jesus gathers with his 11 disciples to have a final pep talk, his final words, if you will. In this narrative, we observe that Jesus has 3 talking points for his friends. It's as if he's saying, guys, here's the deal. I've been with you for 3 years now. We've had our ups, we've had our downs, our laughs and our tears. Now, it's up to all of you. You have learned all that you need to know in order to succeed in loving in this world. But in case you have your doubts, because I know some of you do, here are 3 speaking points that I want to leave with you. Throughout his ministry, it seems that when Jesus speaks to his disciples, he's not always straightforward with them and to the point, but instead he chooses to use images or narratives or parables in order to get his point across. There are a lot of times when these disciples are just flat out confused as to what Jesus is saying or alluding to, or maybe I'm just confused when I read it. Well, either way you look at it, in today's gospel reading, Jesus is very direct and he's extremely clear as he answers the question, what's next now that Jesus no longer is walking with us hand in hand by our sides, leading the way? Well, first off, Jesus says that all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Jesus isn't just some all-star theologian or prophet. He is God. The Father in heaven has given Jesus, the Son, all the power. What is the Father's is the Son's, and vice versa. Jesus is establishing his credibility one more time with these 11 guys, just in case that little resurrection thing went right over their heads. Because Jesus is God, because he has the power, because he has the authority, what he says can be believed and trusted. There's no reason to fear or doubt. Just trust. Easy to say, at times difficult to do. Secondly, Jesus instructs the disciples as to what is next. Should they all just head back to their homes, grab a glass of lemonade, plop down on the front porch in their rocking chair, and just wait for Jesus to return? Well, of course not. There is work to be done. The disciples face an extremely important task. Jesus commands them to go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. If the people who have heard the good news keep all this good news to themselves, then the church is not going to grow. It's impossible. But even more tragic than that is that people will not be brought into a loving relationship with God. And that's where the real shame is. For the love of God poured out on the cross through Jesus, it's not just for a select few or for the most faithful, but it's for all who believe. One cannot believe if one hasn't heard the message. One cannot believe if one hasn't experienced the love of God firsthand. Therefore, it's up to these disciples. It's up to you and to me to see to it that God's love is no secret. We are to get out there and go into the world and proclaim it to everyone, everywhere, no exceptions. I don't know about you, but that sounds quite daunting. Proclaim it to everyone, everywhere? We will never finish that task. It's discouraging that there is no end in sight. Personally, I like to make lists. I like to check things off. I don't see that happening in this instance. But this is where Jesus' third point swoops right on in quite nicely. His final words are very encouraging as he says, "And remember, remember, I am with you always, to the end of the age." He is with us always. Always. God is with us, coming to us as the Holy Spirit, filling our souls with goodness and love that is enough, even for the weakest of weak. It is the Holy Spirit which will guide and direct us in our quest to do God's work and to have the faith to trust that we will not come up short with God on our side. Jesus might not be physically walking hand in hand with us today, but God is certainly making his presence felt through the Holy Spirit, the gift that we receive through the baptismal waters. Jesus has some pretty profound last words before he departs. Directives on how we can nurture our relationship with God as Father, as Son, and as Holy Spirit. We are called, we are empowered, and then we are sent out into the world to demonstrate that as Christians, we have a loving God on our side, an inclusive God that will not abandon us, a devoted God that is passionate about bringing all of humanity together as one. Our ever-present and compassionate God now relies and leans on each one of us, his people, to make sure that this message of good news gets out there for all to hear. Let's not let him down. Let's get to work. Amen. Remember as you go about your day that yesterday is gone, tomorrow does not yet belong to you. So why not live today, knowing that you never walk alone? See y'all next week. Later.